Did you know that according to a poll conducted by a Canadian newspaper, 73% of Americans think that Toronto is the capital of Canada? Maybe you're in that 73% who are now asking, wait, what is the capital of Canada if not Toronto? The answer is Ottawa. Canada is not alone in having its capital city overshadowed by a much glitzier and more glamorous city. Many people think New York City is the capital of New York, that Detroit is the capital of Michigan, or that Portland is the capital of Oregon. Nearly half of our state capitals are overshadowed by a bigger, more well-known city. In this video, we'll look at empty state capitals that hardly anyone lives in, why they were deemed worthy of being the state capital in the first place, and what is the city doing, if anything, to revitalize itself. Stay tuned to the end to see the states with the most populous state capitals. Number 10 is Jefferson City, Missouri. When asked what the capital of Missouri is, people invariably answer St. Louis. When told no, their next guess is Kansas City, which, to be fair, not everyone even realizes it isn't in Kansas. But I digress. Jefferson City is the classic example of the importance of a central location. You'll see that throughout this list. Examples of where a bigger, more prosperous city was overlooked as its capital due to the importance of a location central in the state and accessible to people from the four corners of Missouri. Jefferson City is the 9th least populous state capital with only 42,600 residents. Why is it so empty? For starters, it's isolated. It's 2 hours from St. Louis and 2.5 hours from Kansas City. Though it has a beautiful Capitol building, it doesn't have some of the other things people want in a city. It has no professional sports teams, no skyscrapers, very few big city amenities, and not much to do to attract younger people. It lacks a certain vibrancy. It is, however, significantly safer than Kansas City and St. Louis, and has the Midwestern charm lacking in other big cities. Number 9 is Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That's right, it's Harrisburg, and not Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, that has the honor of serving as the state capital. It has a population of only 50,000 compared to Philly and Pittsburgh, with populations of 1.57 million and 300,000 respectively. The population was on a sharp decline from 1950 to 2000, where the population went from nearly 90,000 to only 49,000. It's had a very slight increase since then, gaining around 1,500 residents. Unfortunately, there is no anticipated surge. So, why is Harrisburg the capital? Location was, indeed, the biggest reason why Harrisburg would become the state capital of Pennsylvania. It's located in the central part of the state, and also located next to the Susquehanna River. Being in the center of Pennsylvania made the trip by horse and horse-drawn carriages easier for those traveling to the state capital. I doubt they were considering Amazon Prime delivering by drone back in the day. Originally in 1799, Pennsylvania decided to move the state capital to Lancaster, due to Philadelphia being the nation's capital at the time. How's that for confusion? At one time, if you guessed that DC was the capital of America, you'd have been wrong. It was Philly, home of the Liberty Bell. Unfortunately for Harrisburg, as people urbanized, it fell behind and remained empty. Number 8 is Springfield, Illinois, with just under 113,000 people. That is greatly juxtaposed by Chicago, which has 2.67 million residents. Why is Springfield the capital? If you guess location on this one, you'd be wrong. Well, sort of. Yes, the location mattered, but so did convenience for someone very important in American history. Abraham Lincoln had a hand in naming this city the capital. On April 15, 1837, Lincoln moved to Springfield, where he would live until February 1861, when he left for Washington, D.C. as the president-elect. In that time, he named it the state capital. Some of the reasons this city has remained empty is its harsh winter climate. Not that you get much reprieve anywhere in the state, but still, it has more of a dense suburban feel as opposed to a city feel, which is a turnoff to a lot of young people who seem torn between wanting land or living in a city center, making the suburbs less desirable, particularly crowded ones. The crime in Springfield, despite being a glorified suburb, is more than twice the state average. So for now, we won't be seeing any major increase in population. Number 7 is Carson City, Nevada. This takes the term middle of nowhere to all new levels. It has a population of just under 59,000 people. Las Vegas, by contrast, has a population of 647,000, and Reno, the biggest little city in the world, has a population of 269,000. It's hard to compete for residents when two major metro areas are offering more jobs, more amenities, and more access to other metro areas. Carson City is hardly centrally located. It is central in the north-south direction, but falls on the westernmost part of the state near Lake Tahoe on the California border. While its central location within the state was not a reason for it to become the capital, the location did matter. In 1862, Carson became a station on the Pony Express, as well as the eastern end of a telegraph line from San Francisco. Soon the town became a freighting and supply point for many mining and ranching communities in the central and southern part of Nevada. In 1860, Carson City had only 500 people. So why is it still relatively empty today? Once again, it comes down to location. It's in the middle of a desert, with housing shortages and costs that are too high for what you get. The population has been increasing since its humble beginnings in 1860, but will never outshine Las Vegas. Number 6 is Frankfort, Kentucky. This is very much a capital city, and it is obvious on the weekends when it's dead. All the government workers head home, and the city stands still. It's the fourth least populous capital city, with only 28,000 people. This may come as a shock or not, since it's a running theme on this list, but the city is centrally located. So, while Louisville gets all the limelight as a college town, and Bowling Green gets Mammoth Cave and the Corvette Museum, Frankfort gets nothing but sprawling complexes of government buildings. Louisville, which has 629,000 people, certainly is the attention hog of the state, leaving Frankfort barren. To be fair, it's not a bad place to live. It's small, quiet, affordable, and safe, with a crime rate lower than both the state and national average. It's empty, according to some local residents, because it's, well, boring. A mere 45 minutes away is the city of Lexington, with a population of 322,000 people and far more options when looking for a night out, particularly on the weekends. It's certainly grown since its humble beginnings in 1800, when it had only 628 people. It has been on the increase ever since, but only ever so slightly, and in fact lost 300 people from 2020 to 2023. Number 5 is Juneau, Alaska, with a population of only 32,000, making it the fifth least populous capital city. It is overshadowed by Alaska's largest city of Anchorage, with a population of 288,000. Juneau is not empty for many of the reasons listed for other cities on this list. It isn't urban blight or decaying infrastructure that keeps it empty. In fact, Juneau is a vibrant place to live, with a relatively mild climate. And by mild, we mean mild for Alaska. There are shops, an influx of tourists during cruise season, and it has a quaint downtown. However, it's a very isolated place to live and hard to get to. In fact, it's the only state capital that is not accessible by road. Juneau became the capital of the 49th state on January 3, 1959, after then-President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Statehood Act into law. But actually, Juneau was not the capital of the last frontier when Alaska became part of the United States in 1867. That title was bestowed onto Sitka. The capital was moved to Juneau in the 1900s during the Alaskan Gold Rush. Alaskans have lobbied to move the capital to Anchorage, but many Alaskans fear it would consolidate too much power in Alaska's already dominant city. Voters have turned down at least 3 proposals to move the capital to the greater Anchorage area. But for now, Juneau is safe in its title. And as for its emptiness, most residents would like to keep it that way, so it doesn't lose its charm. Number 4 is Augusta, Maine. There aren't many big cities in Maine, although Portland and Bangor often come to mind when naming anything in Maine besides moose and Canadians. Augusta is the third least populous state capital with only 18,500 people. Portland has 68,000 people, which isn't much to write home about, but is still significantly higher than Augusta, which is the 13th most populous city in Maine. Crime is a huge factor keeping people out. The crime rate is 3 times higher than the state average and is safer than only 8% of neighborhoods of its size. Augusta is consistently ranked as one of the worst places to live in Maine. It has high crime, as we mentioned, high unemployment, and low wages. Its downtown is run down and doesn't evoke the same New England charm as other cities and towns in the area. Portland was once the capital, but like so many states on this list, the people wanted a capital that was more central. So in 1832, the capital moved to the now empty city of Augusta. The population isn't getting any bigger either, and has sadly been on the decline since 1960. Number 3 is Pierre, South Dakota. This is the second least populous state capital with a mere 14,000 people. It is very much overshadowed by its larger counterparts of Rapid City and Sioux Falls, with populations of 76,000 and 197,000 respectively. Pierre doesn't have the Black Hills or Mount Rushmore. It doesn't have the badlands or big city amenities. It's just nestled in a flat square in the middle of the state, in the middle of nowhere. Pierre became the capital, like many smaller capitals, because of its central location. It garnered support from the people in the eastern and western part of the state, given its accessibility to people in all parts of the state. However, the same thing that made it the capital is the same thing that is keeping people out. Pierre doesn't plan on staying empty forever. In fact, since 1900, its population has been steadily increasing. This is due to its low cost of living, good public schools, and a hometown feel. This Midwestern charm is underrated, but as people flee states with higher crime and increasing tax burdens, many may find themselves in this state capital. Number 2 is Montpelier, Vermont. Montpelier is overshadowed by bigger cities like Burlington and is the least populous capital city in the US, with a population of only 8,000 people. To be fair to Montpelier, the largest city in Vermont is Burlington, with only 44,595 people. Vermont is the second least populous state behind Wyoming, and now has less people than Alaska, so we can't expect its capital to be anything other than empty. The two main reasons keeping Montpelier empty are its high tax burden and its high utility bills. Montpelier has a brutally long winter and older, not so well insulated houses, which ranks their heating bills as some of the highest. Vermont has the highest real estate taxes in the country, with Montpelier being particularly high. Another thing that keeps this city empty is its lack of diversity. You will find little racial, ethnic, or political diversity. So, if you enjoy being surrounded by a cultural mix of people with diverse views, you won't find it in Montpelier. Before we get to number 1, let's look at the states whose capital cities have a large and vibrant population. Columbus, Ohio, and Austin, Texas rank 2 and 3. But by far, the most populous capital city is Phoenix, Arizona, with over 1.6 million residents. Indianapolis, Denver, Boston, and Nashville also get an honorable mention on this list for being a highly populated capital city. And number 1 is Albany, New York. Albany may not have the smallest population on this list, but it certainly has one of the biggest contrasts between itself and New York City. Albany is the 16th most populous city in New York and is smaller than a number of towns on Long Island. Its population is a mere 100,826, compared to New York City's 8.4 million. The crime rate in Albany is more than twice the crime rate of the state and is 2 points higher than the crime rate of New York City. Albany's emptiness is apparent when you drive through the streets and see all the abandoned buildings. While it's no Detroit, the urban blight is hard to miss, as many streets are lined with decaying eyesores. So why is Albany the capital of New York? Its history goes back over 400 years and has been the capital of New York since 1797. One main reason for its being the capital is its location, which at the time was the center of the New York colony. In 1777, Kingston was declared the capital, but the British burned it down a month later. However, thanks to the Battle of Saratoga, the British never reached Albany, and so it prevailed as the capital of the new state of New York. While it was once a hub of commerce, today it's just a shell of its former self. But the city is making strides. City initiatives have been dedicated to restoring some of its beautiful homes to their former glory. So, time will tell if this city can come back.